with Eide Bailey now. We're a national firm, full service, and we're growing. I'm in charge of everything east of the Mississippi. I don't know, that's growing pretty fast. So I don't know how long that is going to last, where we start breaking it up into smaller regions. But that's been a really fun ride the last 2 years. I have so much fun growing things and growing in public accounting, but also as an advisor, I've been able to watch my clients grow, and I've got a 30-year career right here in Akron. Started when I was 21 years old in public accounting. I haven't left my desk. I've been through 3 firms through mergers, but haven't left my desk. Um, and it's just been a joyful ride to see what clients do with growth. So I do have that perspective probably more than anything, is watching what works, what doesn't. And let's face it, we're all kind of nobody has all the answers, right? Nobody really has all the answers. We're all kind of out there trudging along. So I'm glad we can all come together today and just kind of talk about what works, what doesn't, and what our experiences are in growth. So I'm going to, we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves. We got some pretty exciting panelists today. So without further ado,
Great.
we'll start with you, Rachel.
Good morning. So I'm Rachel Mack. I am the president of Staffing Solutions Enterprises. We're a staffing and recruiting firm located in Cleveland. We do have an office in Pittsburgh as well. Kind of leading the growth within our own organization has been unique, but I'm also at the benefit of working with a lot of clients who are coming to us because they're growing and in need of people, right? So there's a whole lot of challenges that come with that as you're growing and scaling your business, and the people component of it is certainly noteworthy. So I get the benefit of kind of seeing that as well. I've been with Staffing Solutions. I'm kind of a boomerang. I started there in 2006, left in 2008, went back in 2013, and have been there since. So happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me, and excited to be on the panel today.
Hi, my name is Jeff Kline. I own a couple of different businesses. The first one is called Fund Services. I bought that business. I was a junior in college. I was working for the people that owned that business, and they came up to me and said, "Hey, we're ready to retire." I had to decide, do I want to finish college or do I want to start a business, which is kind of why I was going to college. So that business, we do the holiday gift shop program. So if you remember, or if you have kids that shop at Christmas time for mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, brother, sister at school, we're one of the companies that provide, and it actually started right here with the company that I bought. It's nationwide. There's all kinds of different fund services owners across the country. I happen to have the one that's here in Ohio, and then we expanded out a bit since I purchased that. With that company, we also do school carnivals. We were in the company picnic business as well, and during that time in the company picnic business, we were doing food. On again, off again, on again, off again, doing the catering for a company picnic or different company picnics. And about 12 years ago, my accountant came to me and said, "Hey, I know you're trying to do a catering bit of business with the company picnics. Do you want to buy a catering business?" So we bought Robert J. Events and Catering. We do offsite catering. Anywhere we don't have a brick and mortar place, we go to you. We go to different venues, the Akron Art Museum, the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, all kinds of different barns that are out there doing weddings, and then any corporate events at homes, at locations that the businesses will do hors d'oeuvre parties. And so we really changed that picnic kind of catering into corporate catering, and that's what we're doing now.
And I'll say, Jeff and I learned that we were at the University of Akron at the exact same time, and he did what all of us wanted to do. That was depart and go buy a business. Only his worked out, right? We all know those guys that didn't work out too well, but you actually pulled it off. So
that's great. Yeah, Mack Anderson, Chief Commercial Officer and co-founder at Cleveland Kitchen. So we're the nation's leading fermented foods platform and manufacturer. My brothers and I started it at farmers markets in 2014 and have scaled the business to service about 16,000 retail locations, as well as thousands of locations of restaurants with sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, pickled vegetables. And we're up to about 200 employees now. So it's been a really fun and fast-paced scaling process over the last 10, 12 years, and we've learned a ton. We also have a small venture fund and do a lot of growth investing into small businesses, so kind of know that early stage, trying to break through to the mid to high 8 figures and beyond. And, we're really happy to be doing all of this as a, local Cleveland kid here in Northeast Ohio. And it means a ton to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mac, if you would stand up real quick.
Yeah. I was
So Mac-
5 foot when I started eating the sauerkraut.
There you go.
Not good for you.
Being 5'7", I always admire height, right? So I walk in, I go, "My God, you're tall." He goes, "I was 5 foot when I started
It's a
eating."
good line.
I'll say you probably never get that.
Do you
My
think
God, you're
there's
tall.
Do you think there's hope for me at 52?
You eat a pouch a day, bought at retail, I
Can I
think
grow?
so. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into our panel discussion. So, what's something about growth that you completely misunderstood early on? And we'll just do this popcorn style. Whoever wants to take that first.
Yeah, I think we experienced this certainly early on, and I think too much growth at the right or the wrong time can be detrimental to the business and can put you in a really tight position. I think cash flows will always start to crunch first. So we experienced that early on, and then staffing is incredibly important as you're trying to scale that team to meet the demand. We're also going through another iteration of it's a positive problem, but it is a problem, but of too much growth right now. We've got capacity constraints. So working through all of that is certainly important. And again, it's a sign that you're doing the right things, but it can certainly be quite challenging and put you in a tight position if you don't have the right capital behind you, as well as the right team.
One of the things I'll say is with that growth, one thing that I don't necessarily think it has a huge people component is that if your capacity can't match your ambition or the needs of your customers that are coming to you, I mean, that's a huge problem. So I think for me, it relied on, or it really came down to the people. And I think you heard it this morning that those who kind of got you here may not be the ones that get you there. So that's been incredibly, difficult to learn, throughout the growth trajectory, because you do have to make some hard decisions there. There's some hard conversations, but I think really looking at it as I thought the capacity would come naturally, and that as we grew, people would grow with us. And I think that's not always the case. So that was probably a big learning for me.
And for us, we grew the fund services business a little early on, but we then constricted it back down a bit. We grew too far outside. We had an office that we opened in South Carolina and another one that we opened in New England. Those two areas became available for us, and we realized that distance was difficult for us to manage. Just the logistics of driving things back and forth and not being able to be there in a day to be able to troubleshoot some things. You're putting people in that position to you're relying on them to do exactly what I was used to doing or what we were used to doing in-house, and they were startup spaces. So we have small staff inside that area. And it wasn't the same as what we had here in our offices here. So we eventually let those places go and then grew just within our area here where we're able to drive to, then added on the catering part of the business. So the growth was more localized growth and not far out growth. And we learned that early.
I have a follow-up question to that. This is inspired a kind of a spontaneous question, but that $1 million question, we certainly have this problem in public accounting, but do you build it first and they come, or do you wait for the commitments to happen and then you build for it? And I know that's a yin and a yang, so there's no right answer to that question, but how have you all managed through that problem?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there's got to be conviction on your side that the growth will come and you're doing the right thing. And I think setting grand ambitions is key, matching that up with what you can actually service, whether it's with people or getting to events or providing sauerkraut to the nation. I think it's critical to understand that, because the last thing you want to do is get yourself into a great partnership with a key retailer that doesn't give second chances and not be able to service that. I think one of the frequent reasons we see a lot of great brands raising capital, and this creates they don't really have too much collateral is that they are in a huge growth phase that they can't meet in terms of what capital or capacity, and they need to go out and get capital, and they don't have the luxury of waiting for a better term sheet or negotiating. You're kind of at the whim of the investors at that point, and that's not a great spot to be if you're raising capital. So I think you have to have that ambition. You have to really set your goals really high and shoot for the stars, but be realistic and manage through that in a strategic way.
And that question, it is a balance, because if you do the research and you know that growth is potential in that area, well, you have to make some investment into it to be able to. You can't
react fast enough,
and you can't necessarily. Just in our case, that we grew business in those other areas. There was nothing going on there, and we put a salesperson out in that area, but we also then didn't invest in all of the logistic part of in there yet, because you had to have some growth for it to be able to be profitable to put the things in there. So you can't just jump all in unless you know that you have the capital behind it to be able to help with that.
Yeah, the theme I'm hearing here is that planning is just everything, and I've seen that with the most successful clients that I've advised over the years. Is that, to your point, Mac, you put together a plan that you put some conviction behind it. Do not make it unattainable, but then you do have to build for it, knowing that you've got a plan. But the better you can project and plan, it does seem to work out. But it has to be a plan. Someone in PE told me one time, said, Chuck, never use the term leap of faith. So I'm careful not to use that. It's more of a confident plan, more of an educated guess, but you can say, we know this is what we're shooting for. We believe we can do this. We are going to invest toward it. And because the reaction, the businesses I see that get in the most troubles, they grow so fast, they're just constantly reacting. They're overcommitting. And I think the key there is the planning part. So how do you know when you're experiencing healthy growth versus growth that's outpacing your organization's ability to support it?
I'll say for us, I mean, I think the thing that we've never lost sight of, whether it was times, and in staffing, we have times of, and I call it feast or famine, right? So, and it depends on what's going on in the world, whether it's the geopolitical climate, whether it's a national health crisis. I mean, we can be up and down. And I think for us, knowing when growth is healthy is when, I mean, and I think this seems kind of self-explanatory, but you don't have a dip in your core values or your company morale. The engagement is there. Your customer experience is maintained, if not amplified. At the very minimum, it's maintained. And that for us, it's our candidate experience. So it's kind of like looking at who your key clients are, whether that be internal staff, your external customers. And I think as long as that service level maintains at minimum is where I feel like, okay, we're still okay. If that started to slip, I think that's where I, as the leader of the business, would step back and say, hey, we've got a level set here, because that's the thing that we will never compromise.
And I would agree with it. You have to make sure that you're maintaining what your core values are, and then we could, in a weekend, I could probably take 10 weddings on certain days, because there's so many people asking for those. But we also know that we have to cap that, because we want our level of service to be exactly the same for every one of those. And so if we said yes to all of those just because we want to grow, in the end, it would kill us, because our reputation would be shot, because we weren't able to keep that level of service at the what is expected.
Do you manage a growth plan to grow into that demand, though? Slowly?
We do. Yeah. We've talked about it and said, okay, we can do this many now, as we see the market to continue to grow that way. And if we believe that we can expand out, then we're going to train up our people so that we're prepared to have, maybe we add one more for next year, because we've got a nice core of people. So, but this year we're going to have to train all of those people so that they understand what our processes are, what it means to do it our way.
Yeah, no, I think there's several markers around the business, but really it comes down to that the people? Is the energy, is everyone moving in the right direction, or is it frenetic trying to put out fires constantly? So making sure those core values are reflected, that everybody's moving in the right direction and carrying that passion through in a positive way. You can see that on the team. And then it's, putting together those scorecards, making sure that I think we've all mentioned service several times, and that is, I think, a core to so many of our businesses, is that service and partnership are everything. I think it's one of the most bastardized terms in the industry lexicon is partnership, but a retailer's trusting us to keep their shelves full. Consumers want these products. They want to be able to shop them. And our buyers are actually incented and bonused off of making sure that everything is on time and in full. So we set a metric of 99% plus. And if we're not meeting that, even though our growth is off the charts, we're doing something wrong. We're growing in an unhealthy way. And it's only so long before the Walmarts, the Heinens, the Acmes are going to call and say, hey, love you guys, but even though you've been performing well for the last 8 years, I need my shelf stock for the summer and I can no longer partner with you. I have to give it to a competitor, because there's always competitors in the space. So I think really managing through, being able to show, hey, we've got double-digit growth numbers, but you're also seeing amazing service, our price is right, and the business continues to grow, and the team is passionate, excited, coming to work every day, feeling energized rather than stressed out about all the fires they're needing to put out.
Jose, if I could say one more thing, I think the other piece that is kind of a trigger for me is if innovation stops. So if we're just constantly maintaining and not getting to the next level, like say, there's a competitor out there that's going to be doing it. So whether it's, a business transformation that you're investing in EOS, which I think all three of us are EOS companies, and, you mentioning that planning piece and how critical that is. But I do think having that in place to run your business, while at the leadership level, you can have that visionary cap on to say, okay, what are we going to do next? When that stalls, I think that's kind of also signals maybe unhealthy growth, because you don't have the capacity for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more reactive rather than
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about how important planning is. Looking back at your growth trajectory, what were the most important aspects that actually allowed you to handle it?
For us, that was EOS. I don't know if you guys want to expand on that, but the tools for that, we entered into that during a time when our business was down. We thought, hey, let's capitalize on this time right now that we have to really plan for the business, because we know it will turn around. So the tools that EOS provides, I think, have been a complete business transformation for us. And we've been doing it for probably, I want to say 5 years.
Is it the
now.
discipline part of EOS?
It
Is
is.
that it?
It is the stability and the scalability. It is the discipline. So there's weekly scorecards, weekly meetings that everyone in the organization is involved in, that keeps that eye on the prize. And as you mentioned, Mack, like keeping everybody's rowing in the same direction, because especially as you grow, that's harder and harder to do. You have more people, you have more complexity in the organization. And so without something like that, I mean, I think our business would probably not have grown as much as it has.
I don't know about everybody else in this room. I have a very small team, like 3 other people. You guys have large teams. So some of this is not translating to either like someone who doesn't have a team or a very small team. And I've read traction, but
So I could tell you our team,
Yeah.
my
Because you
team
were
that
all
we
there.
we
You were all
do
there.
EOS part
Started
with,
three.
because I do it as well. We started right before the pandemic and then had to pick it back up afterwards, because our team changed a little through that time. We sit down and meet with 4 people is what our team is. Our leadership team part of it is that's the key piece, and that might be your 3 people.
Yeah.
But your people might be that might be your key team right there, and you could still use that with a smaller group. It's just really making sure that everybody's doing their jobs.
Yeah. And I think it goes further. It's a great system, but it's really those processes and how you're measuring, how you're tracking, making sure you still have that grand vision ahead, and then you're working with your team to push them forward. But we started with 3 people, and making sure that we're all aligned but working on exactly what we need to work on within the core business was critical. And I think one thing that I can't emphasize enough is even in those early days, like the data and the scorecarding, how are you measuring what you're doing and succeeding against those goals was critical, whether you're one person or 3 or 200.
And EOS has helped with that. But for me, most of it was to realize, okay, I bought a business while I was in college and leaving college, and I was doing everything in that business. I'm the person doing the sales, and we had a super small team as well. And we had a couple of people working in the warehouse. That part of it was part-time people. We had one other person that was working in there on the fund services piece. It was a full-time. As we started to grow, I realized that I had to step back and I can't be that person doing it all the time. And then when we found when I read Traction, and that's when I really learned that I can step back and we can even see bigger growth as I'm stepping out and doing more things like these and letting my team today, they're back putting together lunches for all the places that we have to deliver lunch to, preparing for tomorrow's events that we have going on. I'm not in the kitchen every day. I don't go. I don't go in the kitchen. I don't have the certification to be the chef in the kitchen. I have somebody who is smarter than I am in that spot. So I can't be that person in all the different spaces if our company is going to grow.
That changes a lot too. So I think like if you're in like growth mode and starting up, I think EOS, and I'm not getting paid for EOS, but I will say, just because I'm that passionate about it, when you're in that high growth mode and you're small, you're doing everything, right? So, and you've got 2-3 people, you're all trying to do the same thing because it's just grow, grow, grow. I think bringing some clarity to that chaos, whether it's EOS or something else, I think that's the key piece of it, is determining your process first and then building your team around who needs to be accountable for what, so that everything gets done and you're not running around, like the chicken with its head cut off, right? So I think that's the key, whether it's EOS or something else, documenting those processes and having the tools that you're consistently relying on is the key.
Andy, are you hypnotizing the panel up here? Andy's an EOS implementer. Yeah.
Oh. What did you put in here?
There's some sort of mind games going on. Actually, we were actually an EOS shop at Apple Growth Partners. So what do you call that? Royal Flush or whatever.
Yeah.
So we did EOS. And what I always said about EOS, it's not a silver bullet, but it is a system. So at least it's a system, and it gets everybody on a cadence. And because of that, I think it filled a void that just wasn't in the marketplace. And
we don't use it at 100% the way that it is. We've adapted it to our own, what your own business is too. So,
all right. So I know in public accounting, I adopted a mantra: hire slow, fire fast. So because hiring mistakes are timely, cost you lots of time and lots of money. So talk about your biggest hiring mistake. Try not to name names or anything like that. Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And when you're growing really quickly, I think it's hard to use that discipline to take your time in the hire and make sure you're bringing on the right person. And then once they're in your organization and you're not seeing them be a fit, especially if they're not a cultural fit, because a rotten egg can really drag down the team. So I think getting them out of the organization as quickly as possible is key. And we're all humans and we all have empathy. So it's like, hey, you want to be respectful of that person, but making sure that they're aligned with your mission first and foremost, and how they're going to work within the organization is critical. As an example, we're a small emerging brand here, and we hired someone from Nestle, which is an amazing company, and he spent his whole entire career there, and he was a very good marketer at Nestle. But there's an ocean between what Nestle does and what we can do, and it's traversable. But coming in and telling us about commercials and TV is not going to help us get our consumers and really grow the way we need to grow in grassroots and focus on trade marketing. So we realized that pretty quickly, and within 8 months he was out of our organization. But he had a lot of great ideas, and he was a great marketer, but he just wasn't a fit. So you have to, I think, I could have saved a lot of time and his time probably by kind of figuring that out within the interview process. But then once you do realize, hey, this isn't a fit, I think, creating a plan to exit them in a decent way is always key. And then I think, the other thing is just how important a key hire can be. Like, you can really feel when you bring someone on, and it's like a breath of fresh air. You get, CFO is an example. We brought on a new CFO at our team, Dom Randazzo, a couple years ago, and it was transformational for our business. More insight into the everyday ongoings. There's been several key hires like that just elevate you to the next level. And for us, I started the business with my brothers when I was 23 years old. I did not know anything about the food business. So really surrounding yourself with folks that understand the game and being humble enough to learn. You don't know what you don't know, and that's just a fact. So trying to figure it out all yourself is just usually not going to work. Some people can do it. They're amazing.
When we bought the catering business, it came with certain employees, and not knowing the same thing, not knowing a whole lot about the food business when I first bought the catering business, knowing that what we did as the picnic side of things, but not that was completely different than what we have today with the type of catering that we're doing, and it's so much more elevated than putting hamburgers and hot dogs in the field. That we were afraid to make any changes, and I know that part of it was me wanting to learn the business a bit, but the other part was just, hey, these people are the professionals. This is who the previous owner trusted in these positions here. But as I got into it a little further, I realized that, okay, we needed a new salesperson, because that person was getting complacent as to where they were at in the sales, and we needed to make a change. And then as we went further down, we even realized that we needed to make a change with our chef. That person had been in the kitchen for years and just got tired. And I really think we made that change after COVID. I think COVID burnt our chef out in trying to. We knew what we were doing beforehand, and then we had the spot because we were in food. We were able to continue some of that business, but it was still up and down all the time. And when it came back, the catering business came back. It came back in a straight up trajectory, and it was coming back so fast that it burnt that person out. And when we made the change, it was amazing how both when we changed the salesperson and then changed the chef on that, our customers came back to us and said, that's good that you did that, because you could tell that their care was falling off. The whatever they were doing with the food part of it, or just their day-to-day talking to our clients, both of those changes jumped our growth back up. And it was us being afraid to make the change. Had I done it earlier, that jump would have happened earlier as well.
I'd say we're experts at hiring. So. No, I mean,
you're not going to admit anything.
Yeah, I'm not admitting anything here. No, I will say, if you think about the key hires of your business and you're thinking about growth, it's salespeople, right? I can tell you the salespeople are the hardest people to hire ever. And we've made our own mistakes with that. And I think it really goes back to what Mack was saying. We've tried to take folks who are either in our industry or that because they have that familiarity, but did they really have the passion for it? And did they have the piece of that core value that they want it as much as we do as owners and leaders. So that for us is, we are not completely immune to that, but I think sticking true to the core values piece and that interviewing process and being really honest and transparent throughout that is what helps you, keeps people, engaged in the process.
I've never seen anything as disruptive as AI. You and I were coming out of college, and there was www./ right? That was pretty disruptive. So yeah. We're in that generation where we remember what it was like to go to a library to get materials, and then we got on the internet to do it. So we've got the email. This is not that. This is totally different, and it's changing by the month. So where do you see your industry and your business going with AI over the next 5 years? tough question, by the way.
Yeah. And it's funny when you sent that out to ask and said, "Hey, you're going to throw this question in." I just had to do a business trip for the fund services division that we have, and as I fly, I try to find some kind of a business book, and I was at the airport and just looking through, and there was a book about AI and sales and how do you use it. So I'm about halfway through it, and
Yeah.
just like earlier in the first panel was talking about AI, this book specifically says AI is not going to replace salespeople or a lot of the people in the any of the industries. It's a tool,
Yeah.
just like this is a tool now, and we use it different. And we didn't have cell phones when we were coming out of college and had the business start. But you had different tools that you used then. You've just adapted, and now you have this tool in front of you to be able to use. AI is going to be the same thing. It's going to help your salespeople or you as an entrepreneur to be able to put things into it, to ask it questions, to maybe make things happen for you faster. But it's not going to replace the people. It's a robot still, and whether you're using it to shoot emails out, if it's just, and that's what this book was saying, if you're automating it and just letting it go, well, people are going to realize that it's a robot, and you still need the person-to-person relationships to be able to talk
as long
to
as people are
people.
customers.
That's it. And people want to talk. It has no emotion. So AI is going to be a nice tool, but it's not going to replace what you do as a person.
100%. I think we really see it as a tool and a force multiplier. But we leverage automated processes, things that your team is repeating on a daily basis, or even communications out, hey, shortage, inventory notices, flagging things in the system. It's incredibly helpful at, and it saves your team time and allows them to be more productive. I think, for software engineers, they can be 10 times more productive in 1/10 of the time. So how do they then kind of merge that where the values were going both to the company as well as to them as the engineer? How can they be more strategic, get out of the weeds a little bit? And it's the same, I think, in a lot of areas of our business. But again, really helping with automation, with research, with building out looks and scorecards. It's been incredible. So we leverage it a ton. And I think it really is that force multiplier. It can allow you to scale up a small team a lot quicker, leveraging something like Claude. But yeah, we're big fans, but the human aspect of the business is going nowhere. I think there's a creativity is forward looking. AI is based on data. That's all, looking in the past. So having that vision is always going to be driven by the leaders of the business, the humans, as well as the folks in the business every day, seeing what is going on. And then maybe they can use this as a tool to automate and to leverage in, additional systems that really help you. But again, I think it's a great tool.
And I know we have to move to Q&A, but I did just want to say we've been an early adopter of AI. So we actually started employing a digital or virtual recruiter about 2 years ago. And if I think about AI for my business and what I've seen in the staffing industry, which relates a lot to HR in your own companies, it is a huge driver for us. And we continue to lead the pack in that. And it's not just where I think you're seeing now is a lot of folks are using the Chat GPT. They're getting some automation within their day. But where I think this is really moving towards is it's going to change the people that are working for you. They're now going to need to be leveraged to manage digital workers.
There you go. That's it.
That's the key thing. It's really changing how those folks in your organization operate now. So our recruiters, I say, why'd you get into this business? You want to talk to people, right? We want you to be able to do that. But we can help you do that and amplify that by employing some of these things like a digital recruiter or, different things like that. So AI is probably a whole nother subject, or I think it's on a couple of sessions today.
Yeah.
But
I think the message too is be nimble about what you're going to do with your people. That is job one. Is it may not replace job. It will replace jobs. It doesn't have to replace people, but you've got to be ready and nimble to move people around and embrace what's being done there. I will say this: it was the whole reason I merged Apple Growth Partners. Is a friend of mine said, "Have you played with this Chat GPT yet?" This was January of 2023. I said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." I went home that night and started playing with it. Oh my gosh. I said, I was fiercely independent as a CPA firm. I said, I need to lock arms with a bigger force here because this is going to revolutionize everything, especially in the personal service business. I'll give this one anecdote. I know we're going to Q&A. One of the things that's been helpful for me is, have you ever just asked AI how it's going to transform your business? So I had a nice conversation with Claude a couple Fridays ago. I just said, "Hey, Claude, I'm a tax accountant. How's my job going to change over the next 5 years?" It actually did a pretty good job, but it also said, "Don't worry, we'll never replace humans." I said, "Claude, don't BS me."
Yeah.
I
It's
said,
meant AI is meant to please,
I
right?
said,
I mean,
"Claude," I said, "don't BS me, Claude. You can do everything I can do. Why would you say that?" And if Claude finally came back and said, "You're right. I can do everything you can do." But it then went into a further explanation as to humans are the buyers. And it kind of explained in public accounting what the service offering is going to be like. And what it came down to is we got to be better advisors. We got to be much better advisors because the technical stuff is kind of getting handled by AI now. So it's technical know-how isn't enough anymore. You got to be a good advisor to a human being. So, all right, we'll go to Q&A.
My name is Austin Mann. I'm the owner of the company called Eide. We offer ID and badging solutions to large-scale organizations. We've been around since 1969, and the nature of the company's been around that long is you have people that are there for 20, 30 plus years, which is great. But, we're trying to move into a little bit more of a growth phase, which is why I'm here. And we're having challenges with getting certain people that have been there for 30 plus years to adopt a bit of a growth mindset. Because they've been doing it, they've been doing their job for 30 years and they've been doing a great job at it, but we're trying to kick it up a notch and struggling with that a little bit. So just looking for a little bit of advice for how to maybe approach conversations with team members that you want to have more of a growth mindset.
Do they not want to grow? Are they happy where everything is at and think that it's crazy that you're growing? And
there's a little bit of that sentiment. I think I've kind of learned that, I think a lot of people know that it's what's best for the company, but maybe they don't necessarily care what's best for the company. They want to work on their day to day, which I get. So that's where we're at.
so sometimes with that, and I think it was said in the first session too, is that sometimes you get to a certain spot in a company with the people that brought you to that, and sometimes that's where they're going to be and that's all it's going to be. And then you have to make the decision, is it best for you to, as much as you don't want to, move on from them, because then you can grow further if that's where you're going to go. If you need their expertise, sometimes that's tough, and you got to find the replacement person that's going to be. Conversations with that, just sitting down and saying that, explaining where you're at and what your hopes are for it, I think is the first part to do. That's key, and trying to get their buy-in as to what your vision is for where the company's going to be. But sometimes that you just have to, we had a very good friend that we were at the spot. That's as far as that person was going to go. And we had to let them go. And they were there from the beginning with me. And it halfway through where I'm at today, I had to say, I'm sorry. It's just not, we're at where we're going to be, and we need to get a little further. And those are hard conversations to have, but sometimes you do have to make those.
Yeah, I think if you're clearly outlining where the vision for the company is going and what the strategy is, and showing them as well as the whole team, what your goals are and how they're going to be looked at, and they're still not aligning with that vision. For them, obviously they've been comfortable and doing a great job for 30 years, but they're going to start, like, we had to let a guy go and we were going in a different direction, and he was relieved. Like, at some point, it's going to be a relief for them. Obviously, work with them and do it again in a decent way so they can find, if they're not ready to retire, another place to work. But if they can't get with where you're going, it doesn't make sense for them or for the company to
I've seen that
pursue.
before. Some people don't want to be a quitter, right?
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it is a relief. Yep.
The other pieces too is we had an example. We have someone who is, yeah, I'm ready. I want leadership. I've been here for 10 years. I'm ready for the next stage. And we got really real and transparent about what that means, right? And so I think sometimes people don't realize too if you're not transparent about what that actually looks like, then they are comfortable being where they are. And I think loyalty matters. And these are people and we're all empathetic. But I think at the end of the day too, being really transparent about what that looks like for you as an owner and getting folks on board with that early and cutting ties with those who don't see that vision just because they've been there for 30 years, things like that.
Awesome. Okay. I think we have time for one more.
My name is Austin Pauls.
Yeah.
I'm the owner of Overnight Success Coffee. Right. So this question is more directed toward Matt. However, feel free to jump in. So I was in the service industry before. I owned the gym. And I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'm going to go into a product-based industry to give myself more time and I can be more places at once. I don't have to do the physical thing there. So I have great products. When people experience the product, they understand quality, they understand the hard work that goes into it. So I guess my goal, in terms of the growth piece, right? How do you get from having a great product to getting it manufactured and put on shelves, and also making money while doing that? Because retail is hard, especially when you're not a massive company. Retail, they eat after a lot.
It's expensive business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think the first few years are just. I think there's a point where you go from scrappy to strategic, but those first few years are scrappy as hell. It's just grinding out. If you've got a great product and it's liquid to lips, you got to get out there and make sure that people are trying it, getting those right conversations. I mean, is your goal is it a bean or is it a ready to drink?
So I'm a small batch coffee roast. So we do beans, however, ready to drink and our syrups.
Okay. Yeah. So, finding who those category managers are, what they're looking for within the category. I think the other piece, there's a ton of great products out there, especially in a very crowded category. We're in pickled vegetables. There's hundreds of brands, but coffee is a very big category. So how do you differentiate? And then also knowing what that customer is looking for. So the buyers, like I said, they're incented on service, but they also need to drive category growth. They have to show incrementality. So how can your brand drive the category growth and bring incremental sales into that category? And then what's the proper price point for your consumer, but also is that's going to meet the needs of your margin needs as well as the retailer. So it's tough to figure out at first. And I will say, like, the first 2 years of our business, we paid ourselves $200 a month. My brother lived above our facility changing the garbage cans. It's a grind, and product industries are very expensive. So I think there is just that realization that the first couple of years are going to be pedal to the metal, getting out as much as you can and getting data points. So Heinen's was our first retail partner, late 2015. He didn't want, it was 2 months of me calling him. No, I have a local sauerkraut. Why do I need you? Finally gave me 30 minutes. He's sick of me calling him. And we went in there. He loved the product, loved our story. And within 10 minutes, he said, yeah, we'll take it all.
Wow.
I went back a few months later to sell him a couple new SKUs, and he was just blown away because we'd gone, every day we're making sure production's going well, or we're on the lines ourselves. In the afternoons, after sending out emails, we're at the stores demoing and then telling everybody at the farmers markets they can now find us in Heinen's. And he was like, how are you driving this much sales? If you would have told me you'd be selling this much sauerkraut, I would have slapped you on the head and told you to get out of my office. Like, what's going? And then he flipped around his data, and we were beating all the national competitors. And because he felt a real ownership over our story, he brought us in. We were the first retailer. I felt pretty comfortable asking him if he could send me that. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. So I took that slide, and that's what I approached Wegmans with. That's what I went to Giant Eagle with. Like, hey, we're beating all the national competitors. Mm-hmm. We're driving category growth like you've never seen in a very stale category. Give me a shot. And it's really those data points that they can, a retailer that they respect saying, hey, this is working here. I'm going to go ahead and bring this into my sets. But yeah, data points are critical, and then hustle.
A very fermented category.
Very. Some say smelly. I say good.
Two things. First, shout out Mack pickles. I get them every time.
Let's go.
Favorite.
That a baby. Thank you.
Growth, hitting that next level. I'm curious how you guys approach and vet opportunities that can help you grow, whether that be new clients, new partnerships, talent, new hires, versus what might be a distraction or not a strategic right in this quarter or this year. How do you
I'll say for us, running everything through that lens of our core service or core product is probably, is this going to, it's going to tell us if this is going to be a distraction. We're really good at customized talent acquisition solutions. So when we think about doing a recruiting consulting business, we look at, is that going to add value to our current client base, or is that going to be a whole new product or a whole new service that we then have to create and stabilize? So I think it's running everything through the lens of what are your core values and what is your core service, and making sure that it's applicable to your business and not just kind of some shiny new thing. We do that a lot with technology. And I'll tell you, one of the ways we grew is we thought we would grow by acquisition, and we purchased a company in Pittsburgh, and we thought, hey, they do what we do. This is going to be great. But we're 2 years into it now and not realizing what we thought we were going to realize. We're not dumping it, things like that. But I think really we've learned so much through that. So I think one of the other things we didn't talk a lot about today, but I think on our pre-call we did, was risk. I am extremely risk averse. I want everything A to Z before I'm going to start it. But I think the big thing is sometimes you do have to take that risk, but know when to cut it off quickly if it isn't going to work. But I think if you start with that foundation of, does this fit our core business, it really can give you the foundation for it.
Also, if you have the capacity, like, can you take this on now? Does it make sense? Is it strategic? Are you going to screw up other parts of your business by doing this? And then to his point, do the margins make sense? Am I doing this just to pursue growth, or is this a sustainable business that I want to have for the next 10, 50 years? So it's a good measurement of both. But if you're meeting both of those needs, yes, it makes sense for our business. It's strategic, and it's going to make us a little bit of money. Push after.
Yep. We looked at, on the catering side of stuff, we took on kind of a different market. We were approached to come in and help some people out with a catering style that we're not used to. We're more the offsite, go put things together. This one was packaged meals together for a couple of organizations. And at first I said, no, we can't do it. That's outside of our wheelhouse, until I sat down and really looked at the numbers and figured out, can we expand this way? And is it going to cost us money to do it, or are we going to make money at the end of it? And really what we found out is, okay, we have the capacity to do that because our people are in the kitchen. It's just, it really, what we were able to do is we looked at that market, and that paid for the labor for the whole year. So that took care of all of our kitchen labor by taking on this little bit of business, and it made us a little money on top of it. So we really had to dive into it. Even, again, when I first looked at it, I'm like, oh no, there's no way we're going to be able to make that work. But I had to take the time and look at it really, really close to make sure that, this is a nice way to grow.
Thank you to our panelists. And what I'd like to close with, maybe in 10 seconds, 15 seconds or less, what's something you'd like everybody to remember about growth in their business as they walk away today? I'll start. I'll say, if you're not growing, you're dying. I kind of live by that. That's how I feel most of the time. So that would be my less than 10-second thing. It's a must. It must happen.
I think be aggressive, be ambitious, and growth is certainly better than the alternative. So pursue it.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to take risks. You're an entrepreneur for that reason.
I also hear that's the number one regret of people when they get to retirement age. I heard there's a survey. People regret not taking enough risk.
I would say the exact same thing. It's for me and my kind of journey, it's not in my nature to be a risk taker, but that's the time that either our business has grown the most, or I personally or our organization has learned the most. And there's certainly value in both of those things. So just take the risk.
Thank you for attending.